We begin our deep dive into motion practice by contrasting two critical tools: the motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6, and the motion for summary judgment under Rule 56. Mastering when and why to use each is essential for the civil procedure section of the Uniform Bar Examination. The core difference lies in timing and focus. Rule 12b-6 occurs early, typically before discovery has even begun. It tests only the legal sufficiency of the complaint. The judge asks, even if everything the plaintiff alleges is true, does the law provide a remedy? In contrast, Rule 56 comes much later, after facts have been gathered through discovery. Here, the focus shifts entirely to the factual support. The judge asks, is there any genuine dispute over the material facts that requires a trial? Think of it as pleading stage versus evidence stage. This distinction dictates your entire litigation strategy. Now we zero in on the motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6. This motion tests whether the complaint itself states a claim upon which relief can be granted. Crucially, the standard for surviving this motion is no longer simply notice pleading. Following the Supreme Court decisions in Bell Atlantic v. Twombly and Ashcroft v. Iqbal, the complaint must meet a heightened standard of plausibility. This means the factual allegations, taken as true, must move beyond mere possibility to suggest that the plaintiff is actually entitled to relief. The court must accept all well-pleaded factual allegations as true, but it disregards legal conclusions. Furthermore, the court operates under the strict four corners rule. This means the judge may only examine the document itself, the complaint, and any documents necessarily attached to or incorporated by reference within that complaint. No outside evidence, like affidavits or deposition excerpts, is permitted at this stage. If the complaint fails this plausibility test, it is dismissed. If the court grants the 12b-6 motion because the complaint fails to state a claim, the plaintiff typically receives an opportunity to amend the complaint. Courts generally grant leave to amend unless the amendment would be futile, meaning no set of facts could possibly state a valid claim under the law. However, we must address a critical procedural trap known as conversion. If the judge decides to look beyond the four corners of the complaint, perhaps considering an affidavit or deposition excerpt submitted by the defendant, the motion is automatically converted. When this conversion occurs, the proceeding transforms entirely into a motion for summary judgment under Rule 56. This transformation is not merely semantic. It requires the court to provide proper notice to both parties that the motion is now being treated as a summary judgment motion, allowing them time to submit all necessary evidence under the full scope of Rule 56 procedures. We just discussed how considering outside evidence converts a motion to dismiss into a motion for summary judgment. This conversion is significant because it marks the procedural boundary between two distinct phases of litigation. The initial pleading stage, governed by Rule 12, focuses strictly on the allegations contained within the complaint itself. The court assumes those allegations are true, but only to test legal sufficiency. However, once discovery commences, once interrogatories are served, depositions are taken, and documents are exchanged, the litigation moves into the evidence stage. The focus fundamentally shifts. We are no longer asking what the plaintiff alleged. We are now asking what the plaintiff can actually prove using admissible evidence. This transition from testing the sufficiency of the writing to testing the sufficiency of the factual support is precisely why Rule 56 summary judgment becomes the appropriate tool. Now we turn our full attention to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 56, governing summary judgment. This rule allows a party to seek judgment when the evidence shows there is no real controversy remaining. The core standard is precise. Summary judgment is appropriate if, and only if, there is no genuine dispute as to any material fact, and the moving party is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. We must dissect these two components. First, what is a material fact? A fact is material if it might affect the outcome of the suit under the governing law. If a fact is irrelevant to the legal claims, resolving a dispute over it will not change the result, so it is not material. Second, what constitutes a genuine dispute? A dispute is genuine only if the evidence is such that a reasonable jury could return a verdict for the non-moving party. This means the evidence presented must be more than a mere scintilla, a tiny trace, of evidence. If the evidence clearly tips the scales in favor of one side, summary judgment is warranted. This brings us directly to the crucial difference in application. While Rule 12b-6 motions are confined strictly to the four corners of the complaint, Rule 56 demands evidence. The court actively reviews admissible evidence presented by the parties to determine if a genuine factual dispute truly exists. This evidence must be concrete and properly authenticated. We are talking about sworn statements like affidavits, excerpts from deposition testimony, verified answers to interrogatories, and formal admissions made by the parties. Crucially, the evidence cannot be speculative. Mere conclusory allegations, or simple denials unsupported by facts, are insufficient to create the genuine dispute necessary to survive summary judgment. If the non-moving party only offers opinions or unsupported assertions, the court will grant the motion because there is, in fact, no evidence to support their side of the story. Building directly on the requirement for admissible evidence, Rule 56 establishes a critical, two-step burden-shifting framework. This framework dictates who must prove what, and when. Initially, the burden rests entirely on the moving party, typically the defendant seeking summary judgment. The moving party must first demonstrate that there is no genuine dispute of material fact. They achieve this not by presenting their own case, but by pointing out the absence of evidence supporting the non-moving party's essential claims. For instance, if the plaintiff must prove negligence, the defendant points to the record showing zero evidence of breach. Once the moving party successfully discharges this initial burden, the burden shifts. It then falls squarely upon the non-moving party, usually the plaintiff, to respond. This second step requires the non-moving party to produce affirmative, admissible evidence, the very evidence we just discussed, that demonstrates a genuine, triable issue of fact still exists. If they fail to meet this evidentiary hurdle, summary judgment will be granted. Now that we have thoroughly examined the evidence requirements and burden shifting under Rule 56, it is time to lock in the differences between the two major pre-trial motions using a direct comparison chart. This visual summary is crucial for exam success. We will contrast Rule 12b-6 and Rule 56 across three essential axes. First, consider timing. Rule 12b-6 operates exclusively at the pleading stage, before discovery has begun. Rule 56, conversely, is reserved for the post-discovery phase when the factual record is developed. Second, look at evidence reliance. A 12b-6 motion is strictly limited to the four corners of the complaint, assuming all well-pleaded facts are true. Rule 56 requires the court to review the entire evidentiary record, relying only on admissible evidence. Finally, the standard tested differs fundamentally. 12b-6 tests legal sufficiency. Can the claim be stated under governing law? Rule 56 tests factual support. Is there truly a genuine dispute about a material fact that requires a trial? Mastering this table ensures you select the correct tool for the procedural situation. We have just reviewed the comprehensive comparison chart, which is your roadmap for distinguishing these two critical motions. Now, Let us distill this information into the single most important takeaway for your bar exam. Remember this fundamental split. Rule 12b-6 challenges the theory of the case. You are arguing that even if everything the plaintiff wrote in the complaint is true, the law simply does not provide a remedy. It is a challenge based solely on the written allegations. Conversely, Rule 56 challenges the proof. After discovery, you assert that the plaintiff lacks the necessary admissible evidence to support their allegations, meaning a genuine factual dispute remains unresolved. To lock this in, use this simple phrase. 12b-6 tests the plausibility of the story. Rule 56 tests the sufficiency of the evidence. Master this distinction, and you will correctly identify the proper procedural tool every time. Thank you for joining this deep dive into motion practice. Good luck with your studies.